Hey dude, you alright?
I'm good, man. How's things?
I'm doing good, doing good. How would you like me to, well, I already fucked that up, haven't I? Hey man, you alright?
I'm good, man. How's things?
Doing good, doing good. I'm just doing this video, and personally I consider you now a casual player. Would you agree with that, or would you put yourself somewhere else?
You can call me a casual player now because I'm not really involved, but yeah, I was once super involved. As you know, I used to stream the game pretty much every day, play the game every day. I was married to Gears 3 back in the OG days.
How,
But yeah, casual is probably how I would refer to myself now. Yeah.
how long have you been playing Gears roughly? Like, what game did you start? Have you been playing throughout?
Gears 1, way back
Gears
in
1?
Gears 1 when I first got my Xbox. Yeah, it was that and alongside Halo as well. As soon as I got my Xbox 360, I was on Halo and Gears of War. I just didn't play anything else. I was literally those two games. If I wasn't playing a normal match, I was playing private matches on Gears. And if I was bored of Gears or pissed off at Gears, I'd be playing Halo. But it was usually those two in rotation.
Drawn back, yeah, I understand that. Have you played all of the Gears that have multiplayer aspects to it?
Yes,
You have.
yes.
And which of those would you say is your favourite?
Gears 3.
Gears 3. And
Yeah.
this question, I understand a lot of people go to a similar sort of answer, but what made that game stand out for you?
Uh, the base replayability of the game. But when it came down to it, it wasn't really so much like DLC, characters, cosmetics. It was just how good the fundamentals of the game was. The movement was fun. The lag was adaptable. Ping wasn't too harsh unless you were literally playing on like 200 ping.
So,
And any connection was playable. And they sort of at that point, I feel like they just listened to the community. I feel like if you take Gears of War like 4 and 5, for example, wasn't there like a different tuning like every week? It
I
seems like
may
they just couldn't settle on one thing.
I
So,
may have had some influence towards that, so I apologise. I
but
may have complained a
that
bit,
is my
but yeah.
that is my point. It's like they listen to the community too much instead
Right,
of listening to themselves as developers. I mean, they fucking made the game. The community didn't,
I see.
but they sort of tried to please everyone in the newer Gears games. So I think it was just the core elements of what made Gears of War, and not what made Gears Gears.
So,
Hence
so
when
from
TC went
that,
to
I'm
Gears.
taking that you didn't really care what was happening in the background. You didn't care what character you were. You didn't care about skin.
Exactly.
You just wanted to go onto the game and the mechanics of the game let you enjoy it. Is that right?
I feel like that's probably what a lot of OGs will say too,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, there was obviously, I mean, there's probably still the same discussion of, oh, this character is too spongy, or the shotgun is like, it's a nightmare when you're trying to play this character or versus this character, or this character doesn't feel the same. Every Gears game will have those sort of nitpicky details, but for the most part, when it comes to the fundamentals of the game, you know how it's going to work, and you're like, okay, well, this host, like, I'm actually lagging back when I slide into cover. This must be a US connection versus, wait, why all of a sudden in the middle of the match am I like stuttering now? Like, what's happening here? It seems to be with the newer Gears games. I mean, I granted I haven't played in a while, but in Gears 5 and Gears 4, I noticed that like you'd be playing a game and it would seem like, oh, this is like 30 ping, 40 ping, and then all of a sudden it would jump up to 100. And I don't know what's causing that, but certain things you would know when you're playing like a decent connection, and then in Gears 3, and then you would know you had a decent connection on Gears 4, 5, and then it would just spike
So
randomly.
you're not. So with Gears 4 and 5, so you're not talking so much about. Let's say the matchmaking isn't possible for your region, so it expands out to America.
Yep.
You join an American server, and you can see from the start you're 100 plus ping. You
Hmm.
know that you're going to have a laggy match. You're talking about when you get put onto your own server and get random spikes. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Uh,
Yeah,
and
because
I,
at least in those newer games, you know what your ping is. They have the technology to display that to you.
yeah.
So, and in the previous games, you didn't. You just had the guess, and you would know by the fact that your character would lag as soon as you slide into your cover. Your
And that
character would sort of jitter.
And that is interesting because if you think back to it as well, the older games they were host based, weren't they? Mostly.
Always, yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Um,
Well, In saying that, I think Gears 3 had
Gears 3,
servers, but they
yeah.
did turn them off, didn't they? Yeah, it was.
I
I think
think
it
if
was.
you
It
didn't
was.
have
It
all
was.
the DLC, you were off the servers, or it was quote
Hmm.
off map, shall we say?
Yeah, that's right.
Gears 3, if you had all the DLC, you did get server access, yeah.
I believe it was the same in Judgment too, right?
I don't know. I'm
Because
not
I remember
sure.
having so many more connection issues with Judgment, and I played a lot of Judgment. I actually really enjoyed the movement of Judgment, but I noticed there was a lot more like movement lag in that game versus, I mean, hell, even Gears 2. There was way laggier than Gears 2, even though every game nowadays in Gears 2 feels laggy.
Gears 2 feels impossible now.
Yeah, it is. It's such a mountain to climb every time you want to perform any action in that game, unfortunately.
Well, I feel like you've partially answered this next question for me, but there's a little bit more I was hoping to get from you.
Okay.
When you're playing, I know you've just told me now that you're just interested in playing the game and the mechanics of the game is where you get your enjoyment, but I was wondering, when you're playing, what experience do you hope to get from the game? And by that I mean, are you playing to win? And I don't mean, like, do you go out deliberately to lose? I don't mean that. But I mean, is your focus purely, I want to do anything to win, I must win, especially if I'm in, like, the ranked mode? Or would you just want to be playing for the fun of it and trying to get adrenaline-filled moments? What would you hope to get from that?
Good question. I would say it's a mixture of both. I think my mindset hates losing, but at the same time, I do. Well, I feel like this is probably a broken record for people for all the people to say, but I just like to have fun. I would rather, like, in this day and age, I've literally just downloaded Gears 5 again, and the first thing I wanted to do was play some OSOC, not jump in ranked.
Right.
I don't mind jumping in to just run around, and I was never even that good with a sniper. I just like messing around and just enjoying myself, which is why I've never really made montages. I think I made like one random clips and one clutch episode, and that was it on my entirety playing Gears of War. So I think it's a mixture of both. Like, if I'm going on, like, if I load up Gears of War and I'm like, okay, I'm going to sweat my tits off today, I want to go hard, and then I lose, I'm going to be fucking pissed. Like, I'm going to be upset. But for the most part, I sort of flip-flop between 50% I want to have fun, 50% I want to win. But even when I want to have fun, I'll still get annoyed if I lose, if that makes sense. I think it's just baked into my mindset that I just, and that's probably every Gears of War player. I think every Gears of War player wants to be, every Gears player just wants to win, I think, in their own way, or they just hate losing. That's probably what it is. You know you're better than you're playing in that current match, which is quite a lot for me. I'm very inconsistent. That's probably the word I would use. I'm very inconsistent in how I play. Back in Gears 3 days, I would literally play that game from, if I could, all day, the entire day, every day. I was married to that game, so it would hit me harder if I lost in that game versus if I'm playing Gears 4, Gears 5, where I'd like literally never play those games. So
I understand that, but what I was thinking that when you were describing that, it kind of reminds me a bit of myself.
Yeah.
It's incredibly rare I care about winning, but I also understand what you mean about how it can be irritating to lose.
It's more so you hate losing than the actual winning part yourself. Yeah. Like, you know you can play better than what you're doing is probably what you're thinking?
Not so much that. Personally, for me, I only care about winning if I'm against somebody who, I'm going to use the polite word of rival here. You know where I'm going with that.
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
know someone is on the other team and you know there's been a bit of tension between yourselves, I'm going to leave it
if there's some beef, be it friendly or...
You want to win at that point.
Yeah.
Whereas if I don't know who I'm against, I don't care if I get... Well, obviously I don't want to not get a single kill, but I don't care if I lose, if I can have an experience in that match.
Yeah,
where I feel like that was fun. I enjoyed that part. So totally. I was trying to like wonder if you were the same or.
Oh yeah, I mean, be it friendly rivalry or where it's like you actually just dislike this person.
Yeah.
You don't want them to kill you.
No, you'll avoid that.
Like that'll play so hard on your confidence the entire game. Just one death of that person. Every Gears player has that person. It's like you've been playing against that classic Baird all fucking day, and he bodies you from like 9 foot away and you're pissed, that your confidence is shot then. It's chalked.
I
It's
don't know if
GG.
you played poker at all, have you?
What is it?
Poker? Have you played poker?
Well, I think my dad tried to get me into poker once, but no, I never really played it competitively.
The reason I mention that is what you just said there reminds me of something. There's something in poker called going on tilt, which is
Okay.
where you get a bad beat or you know you've done something really bad and you've lost because, well, you've lost, but it
Yeah.
annoys you, and from
Yeah.
there on, it makes you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
So,
Sort of get hasty in your
yeah.
decisions, maybe. Yeah.
So what you just described there, if you're against someone who, again, I'm going to use the words dislike friendly,
Hmm.
if you're against someone like that and they do kill you in a way you think's quite ridiculous, that
Yep.
will bug you more to try and win. So for me,
Absolutely.
I think that's the only motivation I'll ever get for trying to win in Gears.
Hmm.
But I see different reasons for people trying to win. Like
Yeah.
I see some people trying to push towards a rank, like a rank sort of like, bronze, silver, gold, and so on. That sort
Hmm.
of rank. People trying to push towards those. There's people trying to push towards stats, and then
Yeah.
there's people who just have the mentality of wanting to win, kind of how we've just described.
Hmm.
And I try and figure out what drives people to go towards those things, because for me personally, I wouldn't really have the interest to push for the win match after match after match just for a rank or stats. And personally, I think the ranks should just be there for like your matchmaking. It
Yeah.
shouldn't really be displayed anyway, but that's a different topic. But I just look now, I look at the game and see so many people having their own reasons to try and win, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying a game the goal is to lose. I don't mean that. But
Yeah.
I see a lot of people going out of their way to try and win
Hmm.
rather than having a fun time.
An enjoyable
And by
time.
this, I mean
Yeah, I
that
totally
they
see that
will
too.
deliberately play differently in order to
Hmm.
get that different outcome. Where,
Yeah.
and I feel like I use the word here, adrenaline-filled moments. I feel like I have less of those now for that reason in the newer
I
games. Do
agree.
you agree? You do agree?
I agree. And I'll tell you as a good example as well. I mean, first of all, just to go back to what you were saying at the start, I actually look at Gears now, Gears 4, actually, since Gears Ultimate Edition is more like a party game. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like a party game, say like Fall Guys or whatever, Gang Beasts. You just jump on those games for a laugh.
Mm.
I mean, I do. I mean, me and my friends do. Maybe not everyone, but I do. Whereas if it was Gears 3, I was married to that game. Gears 3, Gears Judgment, I would dedicate every free second I had. What's that? 5 minutes we're leaving to go out for food? Okay, bet. I would jump into a game straight away. TDM,
Just to
quick
get a
match,
bit of
easy.
yeah, I understand.
Just to get the time in. Right now, I'd be like, well, shit, I'm not loading up Gears of War to sit in the menu for 5 minutes. No, like I'm not fucking doing that now. It's so much different now. I feel like, I mean, I have to give props to TC. They took risks. They did, and I always back companies for taking risks. But I feel like, I mean, it just didn't work, right? I mean, just to be straight up, like some of the risks they took just didn't work. But instead of understanding that they didn't work, say we'll take the campaign for example. Name me one person who likes JD in the campaign. Name me one person.
I mean, I said
Nobody.
Right, so in Gears 5, I saved JD, but my reason was because the AI for Dell annoyed me all the way through the game. Up until that point, I decided he could die once to save JD. Does that
I'm going to be
count?
honest. I didn't like JD either. In
No.
fact, I didn't like any of them.
I know this is getting a little bit off topic here, but
Yeah.
I understand what you mean. I didn't manage to get any emotional ties to any of the characters in the newer Gears, and that's not just me looking back at nostalgia, thinking, "Oh, I love the old ones. I can't accept the new ones." I just didn't get any link.
I actually have an extra point I was going to make there before we did get off topic. But
Okay.
at like when I look at Gears of War nowadays as a party game, I actually, for a lot of people that didn't know, I dropped Gears to play Fortnite when Fortnite first released. And when I played Fortnite for the first time, was like I played a little bit of PUBG, but I didn't really feel PUBG. I played Fortnite because it had the building aspect. I was like, well, this is new. This looks cool. Play that. The fucking adrenaline I got from that game, because to point out what you said about the adrenaline fueled moments, was unreal. Now, I had a test. I dedicated an hour of my time to Gears 5, and then with one of the new updates, I dedicated an hour of my time to Fortnite. After not playing like either of them for seasons, what would be seasons in Fortnite time, which was ages. I didn't get a single bit of adrenaline playing Gears of War, but I swear I was going to die from the adrenaline in Fortnite. And I don't even like BR games, but that shit had me on edge so hard. And it's so sad because I've been playing, obviously, Gears of War a long, long time since I was young. Since I got my first 360. I mean, how fucking long ago was that now?
We're going back
Versus
much longer than I want to think now.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't got this question in here because obviously I wasn't expecting you to say that, but it just makes me want to just ask. You mentioned there about the adrenaline you got from the building in Fortnite. Now, this isn't a game I play, so I can't relate to very much.
Okay.
But the building in Fortnite is obviously very fast-paced. You've got to have amazing hand-eye coordination, and you've got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And personally, from looking at that, but also being a Gears player,
movement
movement and wall bouncing. Would you compare the two in terms of like
in terms of decision making and planning? Yes, they're very similar. I already know where you're going with the question. It's very much similar in terms of, it's like, compare it to like a professional player on playing, like a professional Fortnite player. They know exactly how they want to build their tower, versus a professional Gears player. They know exactly which wall to hit so that makes you miss your shot.
Yeah.
It's very, very similar in that aspect. Obviously, the games are very different.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like what we've just talked about there really does tie into the next question quite well. I was going to ask, can you try to explain what the newer games prevent you from experiencing that enjoyment? You know, the thrill you got from Gears 3, the adrenaline. What the newer games either not have or prevent you from experiencing, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Core fundamentals is the biggest thing, I think. Replayability from just the base game alone. You cannot buy people's interest with money. You cannot buy it. You have to earn it. And one of the biggest things with the new Gears of War games is the fundamentals of simple replayability factor. The game has to be fun to play before you can bring content to the game. Right. If I was a game developer, which I'm not, and this is probably why I'm not a game developer, I want to make sure my fucking game is fun before I start asking people for money. That includes betas, alphas. Hey, can we stress test the servers? I would throw everything in the kitchen sink at people for free before I even dare ask them. AKA, for money for a start, AKA Ultimate Edition for Gears 5. Was that not the biggest fucking robbery known to mankind? I feel like I've never been... I even gave Gears 5 a chance because I felt like the Gears 4 Ultimate Edition was a robbery. And then I was like, okay, well, they should have learned, right?
I'll be honest with you, I played them both through Game Pass, and I don't regret doing that. That's my answer to that. Yeah.
I bought them because I actually gave them a chance, and I feel like if Gear 6 releases and if TC is the creators, I'm not buying it. I'm just going to be brutally honest. I'll wait until the Game Pass comes out. I'll spend £1 and I'll get the PC Game Pass for £1, and it'll be on that because it's a Microsoft backed game. I know it will. I will play it then, but I'm not buying it until I know they're actually listening to the community. And I've been very harsh before, but I feel like at this point it's deserved because they didn't actually pay attention, and they don't. It seems like anyway they don't care about the community, and also a lot of the people who are TC partners don't actually speak up about these issues. I would rather, if I was a TC partner, I would rather actually confront them about some of the issues that need fixing, and the fact that they should not really be asking for people's money until they fix core fundamentals in the game. And we talked about this earlier, which was, I mean, this is me simplifying some of the issues, but like core fundamentals of the game, replayability, the game has to be fun. Let's talk about servers and how garbage they are, right?
I mean, sure,
it's been like that since Gears 4. And it's definitely like this like Gears 5. But I understand it's probably they just don't have the money and the resources now to put into that, because shout out to my PC players, we can't find a fucking game. unless it's US and unless you're playing on very active US times. It's impossible. Actually, even impossible to find a ranked game. I have to play with US friends to even find a game. And I mean, it's sad.
Can I stop you there? I'm not sure
Yeah.
when you last played. Like, I'm not defending this in any way because it's a big frustration of my own. But have you played since they added the option to switch between lower ping and
Yes.
faster match? You have. Okay.
And mine's on like everything. Actually, how do you search that? I'm actually on the game right now, and I'll show you what mine's on.
I'm not on the game, but I think it's something like settings,
Options, matchmaking,
and at the top.
Yeah. So mine is on lower ping.
Lower ping. So that will take you longer to play. But I understand what you mean. That as a player of a game that I personally, if I think of Gears...
You said longer. You didn't say you won't find a match. Because I don't find matches.
Don't find matches. I understand.
That's the issue, though. That is the issue, because I should be finding matches. But the game's dead. And on top of that, they force it so PC players, and I don't give a fuck what anyone says about, oh, PC player hacker this, hacker that. I really don't care. You're only creating a bigger issue for yourselves by excluding it. And no, I don't hack. I don't like hackers. I'm a PC player myself. In fact, hackers hinder me more than it does you, because I can't find a fucking match now.
I understand your frustration. I'm going to stop there for a minute because just to make you aware, crossplay is a forced thing now, so it can't be turned off. I don't know.
Really?
Yes, it is. So
when's that been?
It's been quite some time now, but that just shows how long it's been since you played the game.
Oh my god.
So I understand your frustration, but I have to stop you on that one. All right?
TC did a fucking good thing. Holy thank you.
But going back to the question, like you've gone into great detail there, which is amazing, but I was more thinking of specifics. For example, don't get me wrong, the servers, that's a specific, but gameplay-wise, is there something that puts you off? Like, for example, I think my list, I'm not trying to persuade yours, but my list would be, I'd be looking at matchmaking times, as you've just described. Then you can get into the game, and it'd be very laggy, as you've just described, but then I'd also be looking at, I don't know if you've played since, I don't know if you care, but my list would be things like shot delay. I don't like how that impacts the movement. I don't like how...
That was actually the last reason I stopped playing.
Was it really?
Yeah, it actually was, because I remember actually having fun with some of the pull-off shots, especially when you're like wall bouncing, like 1, 2, 3 wall bounces, and then you pull off the last cover.
Yeah.
You can't do that now.
No.
And that just, it feels clunky. And a lot of people that know me know that I hate any game that has clunky movement or sticky movement.
I fully agree. I'm the same.
So yeah, no, I totally hate shot delay as well. And you were right when you predicted that shit ages ago. I saw your post.
Thanks. That's not what I'm looking at for this, but thank you.
Humble brag.
So obviously we can all find things we dislike with how things change, because I do understand that older games do hold a sense of nostalgia, but personally, whilst I accept nostalgia completely exists for games, I also believe that Gears 1, 2 and 3 had amazing things about them. It does, in my opinion, feel like it's been lost from the newer games. But I do also think that it's only fair that if we're going to look at things to criticise, we've also got to look at things that have improved as well, things that have been done well. If you're looking at Gears 4 and 5 compared to the older legacy games, can you think of any, like looking at like PvP from a casual standpoint, can you think of any things that have been improved? Like things that TC have added or changed that Epic got wrong?
Yeah. So let's go back to Epic when they brought in things like ink grenades that stunned. Now, obviously, when Black Tusk, remember Black Tusk?
That's TC.
That was TC, but back then they actually removed, I believe they removed the stun factor of ink grenades, and I feel like things like that were going in the very, very good direction. And they did things, I mean, this is a side note, not really related to your question, but they did things like tournaments to try and like hype the community up. Hey, there's a new game coming, we're doing our best, sort of thing. They were very much doing some things that were going in the right direction. We all had positive thoughts. In the new games, like I mentioned it as a negative before, but it very much could have been, if executed properly, a good thing, which is taking risks. Look at Judgment. They did a lot of things different, but if they had of taken those things and did it maybe just a little differently, it could have been a good thing. Like the very quick weapon swap, that was not a very favored decision in judgment. But if they had have did it maybe in a different way, it could have been very good. Also, spawning with some kind of grenade could have actually been pretty interesting for a competitive standpoint. I think you look at Call of Duty, every single time someone dies in Call of Duty, they respawn with grenades, tactical and smoke grenade, or tactical and offensive grenades, whatever you want to call them.
So
I feel
are you
like
saying that Gears 4 and 5 you'd like to see you spoil with a different type other than smoke? Is that what you're saying?
I figure if maybe didn't correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Gears of War 4 smokes like stun the player? Didn't they? Like, did they not?
I think they
yeah,
did.
I think they had.
And then Gears 5 separated between smoke that literally just caused a cloud and then flashbang, which is a different grenade.
Yeah, flashbangs just need to be removed. I'm sorry, nobody should be spawning with flashbangs. But I feel like if a smoke grenade helped with a push, that could have been cool. Or do what? There's another game. Maybe it was actually Gears of War Judgment. I don't know, but wasn't like a grenade was on a timer or something like that. Maybe one Gears game. Maybe I'm getting confused. But maybe if it had been on like a cooldown timer, it could have really impacted the way the game played. And if that wasn't just
like it respawns in your inventory rather than have to pick one up, is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah. So like say smoke grenades, right? I'm not saying frag grenades. I don't want people to spawn them with those either. But if like I'm thinking competitive as well, because there was competitive tuning and TC enforced that quite a bit with their tunings in Gears 4 times. If you had a spawn with like a smoke grenade and thrown it could have been on like a 45 to 60 second cooldown. That would have been a cool thing to have, because a lot of people, Gears of War can be so dominant when you hold a push, right? If you hold a hill, if you hold a spot, it can be so hard to push that because you have slap shots, you have flicks, you have hard aims. So many things can literally one shot full red you just randomly. So things like that could have been really cool to add. But in terms of what they already have that they've done, thinking about it, other than characters and certain weapons, no, I can't really think of anything positive that they've added that's been taken well. I feel like they took some of the OG stuff that wasn't, or that was busted. They could have just adjusted it, for example, to make it a bit more fair. If they had went down that route, ink grenades, hammer burst from Gears 3, where you could like go to first person mode. If they had reduced, maybe like put a trigger finger cap on the hammer burst, or made the retro lancer shoot way slower but keep the same power it had, that would have made things a lot more fair. But instead, they brought in things like the claw, which was like 3 seconds of absolute insane damage, where you could just.
This isn't something I thought about, but you've just brought up a good point that I talked about, I think it was like a month ago. Mm-hmm. The weapons that TC have implemented, personally, the way I look at them, I see them as TC's versions of pre-existing
OG weapons.
Now,
yeah.
What I mean by that is, try and think about the use case of the weapons. So you've got drop shot and digger.
Digger, yeah.
And then you've
claw,
got
retro lancer.
I haven't thought about that one, but yeah. You've got the drop shot, boom shot.
Yep.
Which I think what the weapons are now. I put myself on the spot.
They also just brought back the Marksa as well. Well, not just, but they brought.
Yeah.
Or was it the what was the judgment weapon?
It was a Marksa.
Breach shot.
Oh yeah, breach shot.
They brought that back too.
But I'm more thinking not so much about bringing things back. I mean, weapons that they've created that feel like weapons we already had. And you've
similar
got like
weapons.
sniper and M-bar, kind of similar. And I know there's a couple more, but I can't think off the top of my head. But I just feel like if they'd created some more of their own unique styles of weapons that change up the gameplay, it could have been
just
received
like rehashed weapons.
Because let's say you've got a map and drop shot rotates with boom shot. That's not going to change up the gameplay between rounds, not really.
Exactly.
But when you look at that, that's two different weapons. That's a weapon rotation. There's not a different experience between rounds. And I just thought I'd bring that up because you mentioned the weapons. But not in a negative way, but I kind of get what you're saying about nothing really new
It's
has
not really new,
benefited me.
is it?
No.
It's very much just regurgitated
Mm.
content, which is so unfortunate because, I mean, you look at the maps. How many new maps did we get for Gears 5 versus, I mean, I would have just, I mean, all they did was just make like night versions of maps, and some of the quote unquote new maps that they made, they were like, were any of them even good? I mean, what was that really dark tree
Pahano.
like one?
Pahano.
That one was fucking gross. Like, I just don't understand. I don't understand the thought process behind some of the decisions they made. And then if I was a game developer, especially a big one, the biggest thing I could have done was revert that shit. That map wasn't enjoyed, let's take it off rotation. Simple as that.
I could be wrong here, but they may have done. Okay, well, I was hoping you were going to throw something positive at me there, but I actually can't think. But let me throw one at you, see if you agree or disagree.
Okay.
The Gears 5 movement in terms of smoothness, can you feel what I mean in terms of smoothness when you compare it to 3 and 4? It's got a strange flow to it. Do you know what I mean?
It's very like slow motion in a way, I feel like, which is a little easier to connect to walls. I do feel like I don't know if it has been, but the last time I played, they need to increase the slide to wall distance. Because I feel like I'm forever rolling into a wall that I feel like, and this could just be from old game habits, from old like Gears of War 3 habits. I feel like maybe in that game you could slide from absolute miles away. I don't know. And maybe I'm just used to that because I swear I have over 15,000 in-game hours in that game. But in newer games, I've had this issue since after the beta, because in Gears 5 beta, you could absolutely slide into a wall from a far further distance than you can do in the base game that we have right now.
Right.
You absolutely can. I know that for a fact.
Well, I don't know the actual figures for this, but I do know, looking back on, you remember Gears of War 4 had the competitive tuning betas?
Yes.
I don't know the values, so I'm just going to have to spitball sort of like estimates, but there were changes throughout those different beta tunings where it was, right, we're going to have it so you can slide a shorter distance after your second wall cancel.
Yep.
Or different things like that. So I do know throughout that they were looking at the slide distances, but in terms of whatever they did with Gears 5, I really don't know. But in terms of rolling, I do understand what you mean, because sometimes your muscle memory will tell you that is close enough. But
it's possible to slide into this wall, but you still roll. Yeah.
So
I
relate to that. I think that's definitely a good point.
And I was even talking to like a few of my old Gears 3 buddies. Like, I don't know if you remember D is for Danny.
I do.
Big Gears 3 player.
Wasn't looking to name people in this, but yes,
I'll name him.
I remember him.
I don't know if he even still plays the fucking game, so he can DM me if he wants and complaining about how I'm annoying for that. But
disclaimer: other Gears players do exist. You can get really helpful tips from them too.
But I feel like watching it, like he, in one of the betas, he posted a clutch, right? It was like a 1v12 or something like that. And in that video, you can actually see him slide from literally like miles away into covers. And then you try to do that nowadays, and it's physically impossible. It's absolutely impossible to even hit some of the covers, like at all, let alone consistently. And actually like come out of it without like dying, because like the second you hit that A button and you see your character perform not the slide animation but the roll animation, you instantly say, oh, I'm dead, because this guy's in front of me and he's going to kill me.
You just know it's over. Well,
you know it's over at that point.
The reason I mentioned that, I was hoping to hopefully get a positive from it. Would you agree that it feels better than Gears 3 or not?
No, it definitely doesn't feel better. No, and I feel like if they were to go back to what it was good in Gears 5 beta. It was actually really good. I enjoyed it. I like the further slide in distance. I feel like right now it's very it's not only predictable, I feel like it's Gears of War, it's Gears Ultimate Edition, Gears 1 UE. It's very predictable. If someone slides into your cover, you know where they're going to land, so you just hard aim at the wall.
So what I feel from this movement, and it's such a hard one to try and explain, but I understand you've got really good movement back on Gears 3, so you might relate to what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
On Gears 3, and yeah, I'd say Gears 4 as well, even though you can move really quickly and chain bounce together really quickly, your character does have somewhat of a reset position between slides. When
Yes, you have to adjust your camera sort of thing. Yeah.
Whereas Gears 5, you feel like you can stay constantly in the slide animation the whole time. I know it doesn't really make any difference, but your character feels lower, like it's constantly sliding. Whereas previously,
it's almost like they nerfed it in a way.
Yeah, like you had in the past, you had to reset and re-angle and go. Even though you could do it quickly, you still had to do that reset each time. And I think that's a difference I feel when playing between the older games and 5. Personally, I feel that the skill element is in the older ones because of that reset and re-angle, like reset yourself basically. And I feel like bouncing's become easier in 5 because that's not as what's the word? It's not as
much of a bigger skill gap to do so.
It feels like you've got longer to do it. It's not that big of a deal. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yeah, in previous games, it almost felt like when you hit a wall and you went to like wall cancel wall bounce, you had to press back on your left stick.
Yes.
To actually cancel out of the movement instead of just flicking to the left to hit the left wall and then flicking to the right to hit the right wall. It's almost like you had to go left, back, right, back, left, back, right, back, left the whole time. Almost, not all the time, but it depends on how you were angling your character. That's why angle bouncing was still a thing, which is where you didn't move the right stick to aim at all.
That used to be quite difficult. It's quite easy now.
It's very easy, yeah. I mean, you just connect to walls, but I mean, you could watch any movement player on Gears 5 and you'll see they'll still B button cancel off walls all the time. And their camera will still do that slow movement to correct themselves, because what old games would do, because it was the character would adjust to the animation way quicker instead of just like having their character actually perform the kneel down to run into the position. What it would do is they would just snap into position almost, because the technology wasn't as good back then to perform those animations. So in Gears 3, if you meleeed off a cover and like held back to roadie run straight after that, like your character would instantly be roadie running. There would be no animation for you to get down into the roadie run.
Just gone. I understand.
You were just gone.
Yeah.
So in these games, Gears 5, for example, even when your character would do that, your camera would smoothen out to adjust to where you were looking, but you could still wall bounce doing that, even in the midst of the animation, and it would still connect to walls. In Gears 4, I don't think you could do that, at least not well, unless you were like a god at the game.
I'm going to be honest with you, about maybe 3-4 months ago, I wanted to try and go back to the older games to see how the wall bounce functioned, and oh my, was I so bad at 3 and 4.
Hard, isn't it?
I couldn't do it, and I was looking at that thinking, this is what I'm saying.
I loved it back then too. It was so fun because you were heavily punished.
Yeah.
For mistakes.
But it also showed me that this is going to sound... Here's me asking you questions, looking for a positive, but here's me giving a negative. But I have to say it as one of the topic, but for a while now, I've tried to say that wall bouncing is a high skill thing, but it's become really easy. And I feel that it's become that easy, it doesn't take any effort. So me now, I'm not going to say I'm sort of like amazing movement player in the past. I'm not, and I wasn't. But I wasn't bad. I really wasn't bad. And I feel like I've played that much of Gears 5 now at such an easy sort of setting that it's made me unlearn the skill I used to have. So when I go back to the old games now that I actually took the skill, I cannot do it.
Do you want to know how easy it is on Gears 5? And I'll say this, right? To anyone watching this video that wants to try wall bouncing that's never been good with hand-eye coordination, don't move your right stick. Just use your left stick. Hit the right wall, hit the left wall, hit the right wall, hit the left wall, and you'll connect almost every single time. You just need to learn the slide to the wall distance from where your character is. That's it. That's all you need to learn. And then when you do that, incorporate the right stick alongside your left stick. Like when you're trying to hit the right wall, move your camera to the right ever so slightly. And then that will allow you to do map bouncing, which allows you to bounce around certain landmarks on the map. So if you're in the if you have like a fountain you want to bounce around, you don't even need to use your camera to move. You can literally just use your left stick. And it's something that wasn't really that easy to do in previous games.
No,
it wasn't super hard if you knew how to wall bounce and if you had good hand-eye coordination.
But
it is for yeah, I mean, you had back in those days, you had to use a controller method. Like what I mean by that is like claw movement, for example. You had to have both hands on your sticks almost all the both thumbs on your sticks, excuse me, almost all the time, whilst being able to press it at the same time, which is why I created my own wall bounce method. And I've been using that ever since. It's relative to claw, but I just find it personally more comfortable. But in this game, you really don't even need to. All you got to do is hit like one or two walls and then flick your camera onto your character. And I feel, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but when you flick your camera on someone after you bounce to a wall, more of the pellets seem to connect. I don't know if I'm just being insane when saying that, but my shots are...
That's most likely linked to a form of aim assist called magnetism, which... that's a whole other topic, but I think that's what needed adjusting rather than shot delay. But again, that's a whole other topic. But I'd like to move away from that question now because I feel like we completely managed to miss a positive. Okay. And my next question is also kind of missing a positive.
Here's 5. Is that you?
What do you find to be the most unenjoyable aspect of Gears gameplay now when you're comparing to the older style?
Stopping power. Well, it was a big thing in previous games, I'm aware, but actually, is there stopping power in Gears 5? There has to be, right?
To be honest, man, I don't think so. And if it is, it's not anything like we remember. It's just a lot of the weapons are powerful now.
Okay, it's probably because I've not played Gears 5 in a while. Was it in Gears 4?
I think
someone will have to correct me, but there was one of the Gears games on recent releases. I felt stopping power literally completely broke everything to do with your movement. Okay. Like it almost halved your slide to wall distance is what I feel like. If you were trying to slide to, say you were trying to wall bounce around a Lancer, if someone hit you with like 3 bullets of a Lancer, your slide to wall distance felt like it was halved. Maybe that's over exaggerating, but it's just what I feel like. And I could never hit a wall during that. And I would roll and I'd be dead. Like, I don't really know what else to say. But I also feel like the lack of attention to certain things, like let's be brutally honest here. The one thing I did want to mention was actually I think I did mention this. It was the changing of tuning every single week, every single 2 weeks. Like when it came to like shotgun tuning, for example, they just couldn't settle on one thing. It felt like in Gears 3, can you remember them changing how the shotgun worked?
No.
In Gears Ultimate Edition.
I didn't really enjoy that game, so I didn't play.
See, I didn't either, but I don't think they ever changed the tuning. In Gears 4 and in Gears 5, they changed it like what felt like every week. And there was a tweet I remember seeing from one of the developers, which was just like, it was something along the lines of, I mean, we developed the game. I feel like we should just like leave it at what we made it, or something like that. I think he was saying that partially sarcastically, but I would have fucking loved that, because that would at least, even if it was broken, it would at least give us time to get used to it. Because it felt like every other week it was changing and it was getting worse and worse. And also, can someone explain to me why betas of Gears games always feels better than a full release? Like, what is that? What am I missing here?
Gears 3 beta was so good.
Wasn't it god tier? It was actually unreal. Gears 5 beta was sick as well. Like, I don't know what they keep changing when it comes to it. Like, it doesn't feel like the same
build
game.
Here, we're gonna release something else.
Yeah, like it's almost like I don't know what it is.
Well,
I feel like as a community we're just very nitpicky as well, which is why I feel like unless there's some sort of definitive edition, that needs to be changed. Like, hey, well, this guy can literally crab walk across the fucking map. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, Gears 1. I'm not fucking fixing this. You know what I mean? Like, just leave it how it is. There was just no consistency when it came to the game. And it was just, you know, they just needed to settle on one thing, I think.
Well, I know, I've got to be honest. Like, I think I'm, like, part of the problem towards that. And I think I'm not the only one, but I'm definitely part of the problem towards that because I have voiced dislikes towards it. Now, Gears 4, I don't think it applies to quite as much, but it still does, in my opinion.
Yes.
But I'm going to say, for the sake of keeping it simple, I'm going to put this example just for Gears 5, but we can potentially apply it to 4. This is my opinion. I'm not saying that's definitely what happened. It's just, as a player, it's how I feel. I feel like Gears 5 was released for the complete casual player, and by that I don't mean the sense of yourself as a casual player. I mean the sense
people
of
who
a
don't
brand
really play
new,
these kinds of games,
a brand new Gears player, casual sort of thing. So the game was released in a state which had a powerful tuning. It had really powerful aim assists.
The bot walkers.
Essentially, yes.
I'll say it. You don't have to. The bot walkers.
But it was aimed towards people who want to play like that. And
I agree.
The argument I make towards this, and it might take me a minute to explain, so please bear with me, but it's, you've got a divide. Now, I understand I'm going to use this word skilled quite loosely here. It's not meant to be an arrogant thing. It's just like a description. You've got your brand new players who we can call unskilled because they're brand new. They are unskilled. Then you've got your skilled players. We're just going to bundle everyone else into that category for now, just for simplicity. These brand new unskilled players haven't got a clue what Gears ever was. They don't know any of the skills that the experienced skilled players do. So when they come into it, they're learning a brand new version of Gears of War. They are, if the game is tweaked towards them, they are not learning Gears of War the way we remember it for the past decade and a half. They're learning something completely different, and the game's being catered towards them. And then on the flip side of that, you've got the skilled players. They are realizing that all their skill, or huge amounts of their skill, is being limited, and the other side is being given easy counters to not only counter that, but on many occasions make their skills obsolete and meaningless, and that creates frustration for skilled players. So then what you've got there, you've got to recognise you've got your skilled players who've stuck with the game for over a decade, and you've got your brand new players who are potentially and very likely playing the game for the first ever time through Game Pass. Are going to play it for maybe 3 weeks tops. Let's just put an example of 3 weeks tops, and then they're going to be like, right, a new game out on Game Pass now, let's move towards that.
Exactly. So that's the biggest issue with consistency.
The problem you've got there, you've then created a game for people who have gone on to play the next new game. They're not even on the game anymore. And then you've got these new players, you've got these skilled players left thinking, well, what's this?
What the fuck's the point?
This isn't fun. Like this build, this tuning isn't allowing me to get any fun from the game. We talked about it before, the adrenaline. This tuning prohibits that adrenaline because a lot of mechanics can't be utilised in the way that we'd find enjoyable. So we're not enjoying it. The people it was aimed for have gone. So is there any sense in aiming a game towards casual? Now, I put a tweet out a few weeks ago, and I said the only way Gears 6 is going to succeed now is if it aims for a brand new casual audience. And I'm aware that contradicts everything I've just said, but hear me out. What I mean by that, Gears 6 will be advertised heavily, no doubt. It will no doubt bring in lots of new players, and if the game is focused towards those new players, potentially that will get more interest. Because right now, if you look at our community, it's been how long since Gears 3? What was it, 2011? So 12 years. We all many of us hold Gears 3 in high regard, but that's over a decade ago that released. So many people have grown up, they've got lives, got married, got jobs, gone off, done whatever. Some of us are still sat around arguing about it on Twitter like idiots. But but most people aren't. And then you've got to look at the hardcore fan base it's still got a bit of it left, but nothing like what it had. Many people have got and more than likely won't come back to gaming in that same way, especially not to the dedication levels we used to have for Gears 3. And then
Yeah.
I've just explained now about how the skill seems to have gone from the game. Like, if I go back to games that I found difficult, I can't do it anymore because I've unlearned that skill. And there's
Yeah.
only a small percentage of us left compared to how many masses are getting through Game Pass.
Hmm.
So I don't understand what the logic is in aiming towards skill anymore, because there's no one on the game left to teach that skill, to use that skill. It feels like we've all kind of moved on or been pushed away from Gears, and you've got these new people in. Would you agree with aiming towards casual, or would you still like to see a skill return? Would you think it'd be not so much in your preference at this point? What do
Yeah.
you think would be better for Gears?
I feel like the more rewarding aspect of the game is learning how to be good at it. I feel like sitting there holding down your left trigger with your Lancer isn't going to teach you how to play the game. On the flip side, I feel like there should be easier ways to learn how to play the game. I really do feel that way, because the Gears of War community is very niche in the fact that there's not very many tutorials that'll teach you how to do advanced things. I mean, back in the day, we all learned how to do slap shots, back A's, up A's,
Taught ourselves
camera movements. We taught ourselves it, and then you would sit on like hype festation streams and be like, "What the fuck did that guy just do? Like, how did he do that?"
Yeah.
And you would sit in a lobby and practice, and that's why a lot of the wall bouncers got flack back in the day for sitting in lobbies and practicing their movements and like their shots and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to teaching aim, that's experience. You need to find your preference when it comes to sensitivity and how the game just functions
You just
as a general.
feel it in your hands.
You just gotta, it's muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
It's like learning when to drop shot in Call of Duty or jump shot. You know, both of them.
Pretend you didn't say that.
Well, I mean, the same applies when it comes to wall bounce, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, if you want to wall bounce out of the way of someone's shot, you're going to do it. If you want to drop shot out of the way of someone's shot or jump shot, you're going to do it. It's just the way it is. And it gets to a point now where I don't know who, if anyone, is even doing tutorials for things like that, because no one needs it.
No,
the game is
I don't
so,
think so.
casual friendly now that why even implement movement when you can just hard aim over a cover and get a 4 point for free?
Well, I
Like,
like the fact you mentioned that, because as much as what I just said there contradicts again what I'm about to say, because I do think that the only way for Gears to succeed is aiming towards casual players. I agree with you. I do not want to see the skill go. I really don't. So a few months ago I put out a video, I'm not sure if you've seen it, it's fine if not, but I included an idea about, Gears 5's boot camp. You know how very, very casual that is. It's literally just teaching the extreme basics like run, shoot, aim, all those things. I was thinking, what about an advanced boot camp? Because you know how in the casual boot camp you had like
I
a
agree
hologram.
with that, actually.
Yeah, you had a hologram teaching you, right, this is how you slide into cover, that's how you walk on the cover. You could
Yep.
literally have that hologram showing you how how your character will look performing those moves. So then
Agreed.
a player can learn, right, okay, this is how I can play the game basic, so I can go into campaign. Or if I'm thinking of going to PvP against players who are more than likely going to be better than me, what can I expect? I can go into this boot camp where it's showing me the more advanced things, and I can see, right, okay, that's what it's going to look like. This is how I do it. I can have a practice without being in the full speed PvP environment where I'm getting battered by everyone. I'm just in my own little place. I can practice.
Do you know what I actually like about you saying that is, do you mind if I use Halo as an example here?
No, go for it.
343 Studios, which is the current developers of Halo, if anyone's never played that game before, they actually hired ex-professional players to help develop the movement of their game. Now, that's only like 30% of the game, right? If TC were to hire, I don't know if they have, maybe they did.
At one point they did, to be honest. I think they did.
Okay, but again, that's only like 30% of the game. TC have to make the right decisions after that and listen to the professional players.
Right.
And if they say they did, then the professional players are at fault. But if they hire the professional players it doesn't even have to be pro players, but just players that know the game. I mean, that's probably just a stretch, but professional players who have been dedicating their time to the game, those are like the best bets to like help get point across if you're not listening to the community, right? Or on social media. If you're hiring those players and you're like, okay, what do you think about this? Does the shot need to be stronger? Does it need to be weaker? What about the placement of these weapons? What about the positioning of the slide to wall? Do you want wall canceling? Does wall canceling make a difference? All these questions need to be asked to these players, and at that point, hopefully employees, and they should be able to receive that criticism and say, okay, well, this is a bit too strong. The slide to wall distance is a bit fast. And it's like, if you're playing on lower sensitivity, it's virtually impossible to catch up to this guy with the camera speed. All those things need to be taken into consideration. But I feel like when it comes to anything when you take any examples I've just put out there, you think about it as you in that position trying to fight someone, what I've just said, and every single time you'll hit your shot versus someone on Gears 5.
So what I'm taking from that is, would you prefer it if... So throughout our conversation, you've mentioned it a few times about how everyone was getting involved with feedback and things like that. Would you prefer it... So there's two questions in one here, but I'll ask the first one first. Would you prefer it if only pros gave feedback and not casuals?
No.
No. Okay.
Because that's toxic.
But by feedback, I mean like involvement with actually making a change.
That's toxic.
Okay. So
that's so like... toxic, it's unreal, because that's only saying that pro players have an opinion on the game, and they'll just cater it to how they want. Okay. It's a community. It's the Gears developers aren't playing the game; they're making it. The Gears community is playing the game. Doesn't matter if you're pro or not, but it's all about honesty. I think pro players are the easiest to reach because they're dedicating their time to the game, but it's all dependent on the pro if they're going to be honest and not just put their preference in the game. Like, if I put it like this, right? If I was sitting there in the Gears 5 beta and I was employed by TC, I'd be like, okay, this is fine. And then I played the real game and I'm like, what the fuck did you change? Like, revert this back. Make this change. Like, this needs to go, like, ASAP. Like, get on the computer right now and make this change. Well, I'd be badgering these developers to make these change. But it's also, I feel like, on one hand, they're listening to the community too much, and on the other hand, they just give up on the community.
Well,
and there was never it was always a seesaw. Sorry to cut you off. It was always like a seesaw, and they were never consistent on their decisions.
I do see it. I really do see it. I felt like they were trying to listen to everybody. I felt like they were trying to see that the community, let's just make it simple, let's say the community has two sides, one that likes one thing, the other that likes the other. Felt like they were always trying to find a middle ground, which that middle ground will never exist, because let's take wall bouncing for example. Either you like wall bouncing or you don't. So let's say you're trying to find a middle ground for wall bouncing to keep everybody happy. You reduce the effectiveness of wall bouncing, so it's in the middle. Now you've got people who don't like wall bouncing seeing that wall bouncing is still there, so they're not happy. You've got people who like wall bouncing seeing that it's not as effective anymore, so they're not happy. So rather than making everybody happy, you've made everyone unhappy, and no one in the middle likes what's been made. That's the feeling I got from the changes that were made in a lot of places in Gears 5, and I do think it was from a place of trying genuinely to make people happy. I don't think they were trying to annoy people. I just think that making everybody happy wasn't possible for a game like Gears. But
they continued to push for that, which was my issue, is they were only trying to apply for people instead of, which is why I mentioned earlier that one of the developers was like, well, we're the ones that developed the game. Maybe we should, just put it how we want it.
Well, you mentioned about the involvement of pros. I know you're not saying only pros, but you mentioned the involvement of pros. I'm going to just explain something now just to preface a question, but we mentioned before about our mutual dislike of the shot delay.
Yep.
Whilst I haven't got this clearly written down in paper as a definite answer, my common sense tells me that this is how it become. There was a pro player in what I believe to be a wager match. He was, I'll just say it as it is, as you've done. He was camping on a wall. Where you're not in cover, but you're up against a wall.
Yeah.
Like wall peeking, basically. He was like that, and somebody airback-A'd him, and he lost, and complained about it. I don't know who it was. Like, I can't remember who it was.
No, he deserved it.
But I remember.
You don't even go finish the question. He deserved it.
I agree. He deserved it. But there was a lot of complaints that come from that happening about, oh, the airbag A is a problem. When it's not. The problem is the fact that he's been stood on a wall, not read somebody running across the map at him, and not sidestepped out of the way, not shot, not done anything about the fact he was waiting on a corner and had the clear advantage. He's done nothing about that. He's complaining that he got shot. But anyway, that aside, that created a lot of negative comments towards the airbag A, which built up pressure to remove it. And then
so fucking stupid, man.
So, in my opinion, there's other ways of fixing that, but that's a topic I'm not going to get into because this has been a long chat already. But the shot delay was implemented, I believe. I can't prove it, but I believe on the back of that. And then that's a pro player. But there's also very good, well-known pro players, who I'm not going to name drop, but I've got huge respect for, who do not like the shot delay. So even if you were to bring pro players in to discuss it, they're still going to clash. They're not going to agree on things. So where do you draw the line? Do you even bring anyone and just leave it to the devs?
Yes, you do, because you need to bring the consistency to the game.
Right.
Now, it doesn't have to be a personal preference thing. First of all, let me just say, by reversing the roles, there's a good chance that if you reverse the roles in that situation, the person who actually died to that wall peak, that airbag A, reverse those roles, right? He's the one pushing. If he kills that guy, he's like, yeah, I'm so glad that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
What happens if the other person doesn't complain? Then the shot delay doesn't get implemented. I dare say like 70% of the community that quit would still be playing this game today.
Oh, I agree.
Now, that's just a speculation.
That was my prediction before it happened, but we'll go with that.
Yeah. When it comes to introducing pros as employees, what I meant is there has to be a consistency in the playability of the game. Nobody likes shot delay. I'm going to be brutally honest when someone says that. The only people that enjoy shot delay are people that don't sit on fucking walls anyway.
Yeah.
Those are the people that just hug the walls and they're hard aiming around corners. They're casuals. Well, no experienced players like shot delay.
My intention of this video wasn't to like get into this sort of thing, but as we're having a discussion,
you can at me. Don't at Paul at me for your complaints.
But what I was going to say is like, my intention of this video wasn't to go down that sort of line with me getting involved in it, but as we're having a conversation, I just don't want to leave you hanging. But I do agree, like, obviously I'm heavily involved on Twitter, seeing all the comments that get made, and the only people I see praising it are people who call it tactical. It's like, there's nothing tactical about it. You are sat on a wall waiting for somebody to run to you, and you're not happy that you don't have time to see them running to you and sidestep out the way and do what you need to do. You cannot get hit. This is a fact. You cannot get hit by an airbag A if you're not on a wall.
I can see such positivity from it in the person who does play slower. And I feel like that's why it's praised. Maybe the people that are playing Gears these days, maybe they're just accustomed to it now, the slower gameplay. I don't want to say like it's boring. I don't want to point fingers and say that's a terrible play style, because it's all preference at the end of the day. It's not my perspective, my personal. I can't tell you how to play. It's wrong for me to do that. Play how you want to play. If you're not even good at playing fast, then you're loving this, right?
I think that's a big thing, though. It's preference, and that's exactly what I am going to bring it back to the video now, because I could go on about this for hours, and that's not really what I want to do. But it is preference, and that's what I'm trying to get from all this, because obviously I'm trying to find patterns or preferences to see where things are good and where things aren't, and where they could be improved. So now to lead on to the next question, the last question. Let's imagine you were in charge of making the decisions, like what you said goes. You're working on Gear 6 and you're trying to suit the game towards what you, not thinking about anybody else at this point. You're being selfish. You're thinking about yourself, what you would enjoy. Up to 3 changes, what would you make?
So you said this is my preference.
Your preference, you're thinking of only
all right, shot delay goes.
Shot delay goes, okay.
I want to leave the shot tuning up to the developers.
In terms of
And
damage or like spread of.
whatever they like, spread, damage, consistency, whatever, distance from where you are, how they calculate the percentage of how much damage you should be
Okay,
doing
I
to a person
understand.
who's that far away.
I'm with
That should be left to the developers. And then once every like 6 months or maybe even 5 months, have a poll, get engaged with the community and talk to them and say, like, what's your biggest complaints? And I feel like the biggest, well, to go on to my last, I'll get on to my last point in a second, but I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we're missing is general communication from players to developers. And I can understand why, because there's so much unnecessary hate and death threats going towards certain people, developers, for no reason, just because they're unhappy with the way
Just
the
to
game
jump
is.
in there, that's something that I'll never agree with. I'm never going to.
I don't
support anyone
understand
doing
it.
that. Like,
I
don't
mean,
get me wrong.
it's
There's
such
parts of the
childish
game.
behavior. Yeah.
There's parts of the game I can dislike, but anyone that goes to that extreme, what the hell? But yeah, sorry, carry on.
And I will admit, I've been actively tagging, maybe not actively, but I've tagged the coalition in posts before,
Yeah.
angrily. But I feel like that's because they don't listen. And I feel like there is a massive disconnect with, I mean, they don't need to listen to us. It's their game. But they can't also complain about why it's dead if they don't listen to us.
No,
It's a flip-flop situation, you know what I mean?
Completely.
Like, they need to understand that the reason people aren't enjoying the game is because of this reason, that reason. But those are two. The third, I'll say, is to just make the core gameplays of the actual game itself enjoyable. And again, that boils down to how the community feels about it. If you make a mistake, you have to be able to change it.
Right.
You know, if you know that implementing stuff like shot delay is going to heavily impact the game, and then you see your numbers dip by 70, 80, 90%, you got to just make a decision like, hey, we got to fucking remove this instantly.
And
then we'll maybe make things to change it.
And would you undo that change if you had a pro player complaining about that change needing to be there, if that makes sense?
That depends on how I feel about how the game plays. It really does. I'm not going to say yes because it's my preference, but put this in any other perspective of how the game plays. In my opinion, it just makes Gears 5 feel sticky and slow and clunky. And I hate clunky gameplay. If it didn't make it feel like that and it felt smooth and natural, I probably wouldn't complain about it. It just depends on how it feels, but it feels like sometimes when I slide into a cover and want to pull off it, because Gears of War, like the way Fortnite was originally, was supposed to be a fast game, and they tried everything they possibly could to slow it down. It caused problems that was now irreversible until you remove this feature. So it all depends on the true feel of the game. I'm not going to just throw my preference in there right now as it stands right now. Yes, I would remove it. But I also feel like there's probably, I mean, they're smart people, right? They're sitting there developing one of the best looking Gears of War games we've ever had in terms of graphics. There's a lot of improvements that could be made in terms of the playability, but they're competitive. They're competent people. They know what they're doing in terms of how the game looks. I feel like if they listen to the community and make some smart decisions as a team and a developer team, they could really absolutely nail it. But what I feel like, if we just skip ahead to Gear 6, they need to go in with an open mind and say, okay, well, we gotta make some drastic changes. And I'm fucking glad Rod Ferguson's not there to sip on cocktails every 2 minutes, because that was one of the biggest things that killed the game. And that was Randymash that said that, not Livo. Don't let him.
That's not me. Don't shoot me.
I'll say that. You can shoot me in the comments for that, but yeah, they need to be paying attention to the community more and go in with an open mind. Again, I said sometimes they listen too much to the community, and it may seem like I'm going back on what I said, but when you don't reply at all, I mean, shit, they're even fucking closing down the forums. What are you doing?
So, just to jump back to what you just said there, I think I understand your contradiction about stop listening, but you're not listening enough. I understand that contradiction. Like, if, let's say I was a developer and I heard someone saying, stop listening, you're not listening enough, I'd be sat there thinking, what do you want me to do? But I think it's not a case of listen or stop listening. It's a case of see everything and
and listen
have
to the
some
important
and
stuff.
no, because you don't know that. Have someone there who understands what that feedback means,
Pro
and
player.
you can, yes, and you can understand. So let's say you get these contradicting views, you can have the pro player there to think right. This
That
is
was
why,
exactly what I meant. Yep.
yeah, this is why one person doesn't like it. This is why one person does. What situation are they envisioning to let's apply this situation,
Mhm.
and how can we go about making it better or
Exactly.
not
It
change or
needs there
whatever?
needs to
Yeah,
be a mediation, is that the word? A mediator in the middle?
mediator. Yes.
Someone who knows like the lingo and
Yeah.
the context of what's being said. When I said like don't put all your apples in one basket when you're listening to the shot delay, I feel like that was putting all your priorities in the wrong direction.
Right.
Because as a developer, you're like, well, if I keep changing this, well, there's never going to be a happy medium. Nobody's ever going to be happy.
Mm.
But then there could be something like a forum post that's saying, oh, we need more servers or the movement is feeling sticky. And then you could have the professional player go in and be like, okay, yeah, I see what the person means about the movement here or about it being sticky. And then that pro player will have connections to other pro players. He could say, hey, bro, yo, can we jump into your private match and
Test this
what do you
out.
think about this?
Yeah.
And then he can get opinions. Because at that point, you're not just listening to the community, you're listening to everyone. Then you're reaching out to the pros, you're a developer, and you're listening to the casual players
Yeah.
and the people who play the game every day. Because developers only make the games. Some will play it on their off time, but at that point, you're just helping fix the things that we're complaining about.
Hey,
So, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, that was my last question, but just what we're talking about now, it's led me on to wanting to ask something else. Now,
Mhm.
I'm thinking back to Gears 4 again,
Okay.
and the competitive tuning tests. Obviously, again, they had up to like 2.8, all different adjustments.
Here we go.
When they've got a change like this, you're saying you want to hear from the pro player, but
It needs to be one. I'm just gonna say it, bro. I'm so sick of
one.
casual and
Oh,
professional
I see what you
tuning.
mean. I see what you mean.
It needs to be one tuning across the board because what's the point? If you're a casual player and you're absolutely dominating and you're like, well, I could probably go competitive, and then you go to try and play
It's
competitive,
completely different.
it's completely
That's
different.
not.
And by that point, you've probably already played competitive. I know the comments are going to be screaming at me, oh, you should be playing competitive tuning anyway. But what happens if you're just
Can't find
you're
a
just sick of
match.
the flip-flopping between one and the other? You know, it should just be one. What's the difference?
No, I
Why
agree.
make it two?
I agree with you. That wasn't actually the question I was going to get at.
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, you know how with the competitive beta test they went through like 2 to 2.8, and they had basically a different tuning live in the game for feedback. Now I understand they're getting rid of the forums, so I'm not sure how they'd go about doing this. But do you like the idea of having that test tuning in the game? Because you mentioned before that every 6 months you'd like to see a poll. And then
Absolutely.
off that poll, it's like, okay, we like this. And from that, the developers be like, right, okay, we can make changes. They make a change. What do you think of this? And then without impacting the main game, they can then
Yes.
put that test into a separate thing. Do you like the idea of that, or do you still want to have the whole game
Yes.
on one tuning and leave it at that? You'd want the second thing there as a test.
I want that because let me tell you why. Implementing the change when nobody wants it, cough, cough, shot delay, cough, cough, is the worst decision you could ever make to kill your game.
Okay.
There's a reason that people or developers make games. Look at some of the biggest games out there, right? They always have a game, like the game. I don't know if PUBG has one. I'll say that, for example. PUBG and then a PUBG test server. When they have a new gun, they'll put it in the test server to test it first. And then they'll have feedback come through to that. Have it a thing where you can like subscribe or download that separately. And then on your Discord server, which is like the most prominent way to contact someone now, which I think TC has actually moved over to their Discord
I
server
believe so.
instead of their forum. Post it on there. You should have a role you should apply for on the Discord server, which would say something like test server or beta server, and join on that. And then, I mean, fuck, most MMOs nowadays have those, right? It's like, hey, we're going to stress test the server. And that's how they test their servers before they go live. Unlike Gears 5 on release, where you couldn't play it for the first day at all because it was chalked. Things like that need to be tested first. Shot delay. If you want, like, hey, okay, we're going to try and implement shot delay, jump in the test server and give it a go for the next week and see what it's like.
The thing is, I fully agree with everything you just said. I'm just going to leave you with a last piece of information. I'm going to end it there. But shot delay did have a tuning test. It did get feedback, but it was added anyway. But I'm going to leave that there.
Let's see, that's PC's issue, isn't
this
it?
call has potentially gone for about an hour longer than I intended, but
it may be a two-parter, chat. Just saying.
But that was just a really in-depth chat, and I think it was full of information and thoughts, which is what I was after. So I really appreciate your time.
Of course, man. I apologize for ranting a little bit, but I'm passionate about the game.
I asked you to come and chat. You did just that. So I appreciate that, man. You have a good night. Cheers.
You too, man. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.